After the peach hit the water, everything inside was just a big crazy mess. James Henry Trotter was lying bruised and battered on the floor of the room amongst a tangle of centipede and earthworm and spider and ladybug and glowworm and old green grasshopper. In the whole history of the world, no travelers had ever made a more terrible journey than these unfortunate creatures. It had started out well with much laughing and shouting for the first few seconds as the peach began to roll forward, but nobody minded being tumbled around a bit. But then it went bump, and the centipede shouted, "That was Aunt Sponge!" And then bump again, "That was Aunt Spiker!" There had been a tremendous burst of cheering all around. But as soon as the peach rolled out of the garden and began to go down the steep hill, rushing and plunging and bounding madly downward, then the whole thing became a nightmare. James found himself being flung up against the ceiling and then back onto the floor, then sideways against the wall, then up onto the ceiling again, and up and down and back and forth and round and round. And at the same time, all the other creatures were flying through the air in every direction. And so were the chairs and sofas, and not to mention the 42 boots belonging to the centipede. Everything and all of them were being rattled and tossed around like peas inside of an enormous rattle that was being shaken by a mad giant who refused to stop. To make it worse, something went wrong with the glowworm's lighting system, and the room was in total pitch darkness. There were screams and yells and curses and cries of pain, and everything kept going round and round, and once James made a frantic grab at some thick bars sticking out from the wall, only to find that they were a couple of the centipede's legs. "Let go, you idiot!" shouted the centipede, kicking himself free, and James was promptly flung across the room into the old green grasshopper's horny lap. Twice he got tangled up in Miss Spider's legs. A horrid business, and toward the end the poor earthworm, who was cracking himself like a whip every time he flew through the air from one side of the room to the other. He coiled himself around James's body in panic, and he refused to let go. Oh, it was a frantic and terrible trip, but it was all over now, and the room was suddenly very still and quiet. Everybody was beginning slowly and painfully to disentangle themselves from every. "Let's have some light," shouted the centipede. "Yes," they cried, "give us some light." That's the spider that he grabbed onto. They all waited in silence. "I'm trying," answered the poor glowworm. "I'm doing my best. Please be patient." Finally, a faint green light began to glimmer out of the glowworm's tail, and this gradually became stronger and stronger until it was good enough to see by. "Some great journey," said the centipede, limping across the room. "I shall never be the same," murmured the earthworm. "Nor I," said the ladybug. "It's taken years off my life." "But, my dear friends," cried the grasshopper, "we are there." "Where? Where is there?" "I don't know," said the old green grasshopper, "but I bet it's somewhere good." "We're probably at the bottom of a coal mine," said the earthworm gloomily. "We certainly went down, 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 and suddenly at the last minute I felt it in my stomach. I still feel it." "Perhaps we're in the middle of a beautiful country, all full of songs and music." "Or near the seashore," said James eagerly, "with lots of other children down on the sand for me to play with." "Pardon me," murmured the ladybug, "but am I wrong in thinking that we seem to be bobbing up and down?" "Bobbing up and down!" they cried. "What on earth do you mean?" "You're still giddy from the journey. You'll get over it in a minute," said the green grasshopper. "Is everybody ready to go upstairs now and take a look?" "Yes, yes, come on, let's go." "I refuse to show myself outdoors in my bare feet. First I have to get my boots on again." "For heaven's sake," said the earthworm, "let's not go through all that nonsense again." "Let's all lend a hand and help get the centipede's boots on," said Ladybug. "Come on." So they did, except for Miss Spider, who set about weaving a long rope ladder that would reach from the floor up to the hole in the ceiling. The old green grasshopper had wisely said that they must not risk going out the side entrance when they didn't know where they were, but first they must go to the top and have a look around. So half an hour later, when the rope ladder had been finished and hung and the 42nd boot has been laced onto the centipede's 42nd foot, they were all ready to go out. Amidst the mounting excitement and shouts of, "Here we go, boys, the promised land, I can't wait to see," the whole company climbed up the ladder one by one and disappeared into a soggy tunnel in the ceiling that went almost straight up. The minute they were out in the open, standing on the very top of the peach near the stem, blinking their eyes in the sunlight, they looked nervously around. "What happened? Where are we? But this is impossible. Unbelievable. Terrible. I told you we were bobbing up and down," said the ladybug. "We're in the middle of the sea," cried James. And indeed they were. A strong current and a high wind had carried the peach so quickly from the shore that already the land was out of sight. All around them lay the vast ocean, deep and hungry. Little waves were bibbling against the side of the peach. "But how did it happen?" they cried. "Where are the fields? Where are the woods? Where is England?" Nobody, not even James, could understand how in the world such a thing could have happened. "Ladies and gentlemen," said the old green grasshopper, trying to very hard keep the fear and disappointment out of his voice, "I'm afraid that we find ourselves in a rather awkward position." "Awkward!" cried the earthworm. "My dear old grasshopper, we are finished. Every one of us is about to perish. I might be blind, you know, but with that much I can see clearly." "Off with my boots!" cried the centipede. "I can't swim with my boots on." "I can't swim at all," said the ladybug. "Nor can I," said the glowworm. "Nor I," said Miss Spider. "None of us three girls can swim a single stroke." "But you don't have to swim," said James calmly. "We're floating beautifully, and sooner or later a ship is bound to come along and pick us all up." They stared at him in amazement. "Are you quite sure that we're not sinking?" said the ladybug. "Of course I'm sure," said James. "Go look for yourselves." They all ran to the side of the peach and peered down at the water. "The boy is quite right," said the old green grasshopper. "We are floating beautifully. Now we must all sit down and keep perfectly calm, and everything will be all right in the end." "What an absolute nonsense," said the earthworm. "Nothing is ever right in the end, and well you know it." "Poor earthworm," said the ladybug, whispering in James's ear. "He loves to make everything into a disaster. He hates to be happy. He is only happy when he's gloomy. Now isn't that odd? But then I suppose just being an earthworm is enough to make one pretty gloomy, don't you agree?" "If the peach is not going to sink," said the earthworm, "and if we're not going to be drowned, then every one of us is going to starve to death. Don't you realize that we haven't had anything to eat since yesterday morning?" "By golly, he's right," cried the centipede. "For once the earthworm is right." "Of course I'm right, and we're not likely to find anything to eat around here. We'll get thinner and thinner and thirstier, and we shall all die a slow and grisly death from starvation. I'm dying already. I'm slowly shriveling up for want of food. Personally, I would rather drown." "My good heavens, you must be blind," said James. "You know very well I'm blind," said the earthworm. "There's no need to rub it in." "I didn't mean that," said James. "I'm sorry. But can't you see that?" "See," said the earthworm. "How can I see if I'm blind?" James took a deep, slow breath. "Can't you realize," he said patiently, "that we have enough food here to last for weeks and weeks?" Where?" they all said. "Why, the peach, of course. Our whole ship is made of food." "Jumpin' Jehoshaphat!" they cried. "We never thought of that." "My dear James," said the old green grasshopper, laying his front leg affectionately on James' shoulder, "I don't know what we'd do without you. You are so clever.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are saved! We are certainly not, said the earthworm. You must be crazy. We can't eat the ship. It's the only thing keeping us alive. We shall starve if we don't, said the centipede. And we will drown if we do, said the earthworm. Oh dear, said the great old green grasshopper. Now we're worse off than before. Miss Spider asked, couldn't we just eat a little bit of it? I'm so dreadfully hungry. James said, you can eat all that you want. It would take us weeks and weeks to make even a dent in this enormous peach. Surely you can see that. Good heavens, he's right again, cried the old green grasshopper, clapping his hands. It would take weeks and weeks. Of course it would, but let's not go on making a lot of holes in the deck. I think we better simply scoop it out from the tunnel over there. That way, the way we've just come up. That's an excellent idea, said the ladybug. And what are you so worried about, earthworm, said the centipede. What's the problem? The problem is, said the earthworm, the problem is that there's no problem. Everyone burst out laughing. Cheer up, earthworm, they said. Come and eat. And they all went to the tunnel entrance and began scooping out great chunks of juicy golden-colored peach flesh. Oh, marvelous, said the centipede, stuffing in his mouth. Delicious, said the old green grasshopper. Just fabulous, said the glowworm. Oh my, said the ladybug. What a heavenly taste. She looked up at James and James smiled back at her. They all sat on the deck together. You know, James, up until this moment, I have never in my life tasted anything except those tiny green flies that live on rose bushes. They have a perfectly delightful flavor, but this peach is even better. Isn't it glorious, said Miss Spider, coming over to join them. Personally, I have always thought that a big, juicy, caught-in-the-web blue fly was the finest dinner in the world until I tasted this. What a flavor, said the centipede. It's terrific. There's nothing like it. There's never has been anything like it. And I should know because I personally tasted all the finest foods in the world. The centipede, with his mouth full of peach running down his chin, suddenly burst into song. I've eaten many strange and scrumptious dishes in my time, like jellied gnats and dandy prats and earwigs cooked in slime, and mice with rice. They're really nice when roasted in their prime, but don't forget to sprinkle them with just a touch of grime. I've eaten fresh mud burgers by the greatest cooks there are, and scrambled dregs and stink bugs' eggs and hornets stewed in tar, and pails of snails and lizards' tails and beetles by the jar. A beetle is improved by just a splash of vinegar. And I've often eat boiled slobbages. They're grand when served beside minced doodlebugs and curried slugs. And have you ever tried mosquitoes' toes and wampfish roes, most deliciously fried? The only trouble is they disagree with my inside. I'm mad for crispy wasp stings and a piece of buttered toast, and pickled spines of porcupines, and then a gorgeous roast of dragon's flesh, well hung, not fresh. It costs $1 at most, and it comes to you in barrels if you order it by post. And I crave the tasty tentacles of octopi for tea. I like hot dogs, I love hot frogs, and surely you'll agree A plate of soil with engine oil is a super recipe. I hardly need to mention that it's practically free. For dinner on my birthday, I shall tell you what I choose. Hot noodles made from poodles on a slice of gold garden hose, and a rather smelly jelly made of armadillo's toes. The jelly is delicious, but you have to hold your nose. Now comes the centipede declares the burden of my speech. These foods are rare beyond compare, and some are out of reach. But there's no doubt I'd go without 1,000,000 plates of each for just one small mite, one tiny bite of this fantastic peach.